So I was looking for a video about the Kerch Bridge. It was recently attacked again. They didn't actually the Ukrainians didn't actually get through, but I was looking to see how that was covered. And I stumbled over this video about how the West reports high Ukrainian losses and questions the counteroffensive. And I thought, let's see what they have to say here. This should be interesting how they frame it. So we're going to watch that. And I want you to look for the propaganda points that they push into it, because they keyword stuff propaganda points, and then they kind of twisted and manipulated what they're saying, and you'll see this as I pointed out. Okay, let's hear what they have to say.
It's no secret that Kiev's counteroffensive isn't going well. Russia has been saying this for months.
That's part one. It's not going well. They've been saying it and saying it and saying it. It's not going well. The counteroffensive's not going to work. Keep going.
Now, even Western media is admitting it, as the bodies of dead Ukrainian soldiers continue to pile up.
At cemeteries all across Ukraine, the military dead just keep coming. Here in Lviv, near the border with Poland, very far from the fighting on the Eastern Front, the fresh graves of soldiers number in their hundreds. There are so many, in fact, at this cemetery that up the hill here, they're clearing the way of the fallen from previous wars to make room for those lost in this conflict.
Ukraine is refusing to...
Okay, that didn't tell us anything. That just told us that there were a number of bodies, and it was a BBC report talking about this, but what exactly did we take away from that? Well, we'll see how they kind of parlay that into the next bit and try to connect the dots.
To release official figures of war casualties, claiming that it is a state secret. But the New York Times has no problem outing them, it seems.
Okay, so what we saw here was the headline first that had 500,000. Okay, and you only see that very briefly. Troop deaths and injuries in the Ukraine war near 500,000, U.S. officials say. But that's total troop deaths, but it looks like something worse than it is. But let's see what they highlight here, because this will be instructive.
In just a year and a half, Ukraine's military death have already surpassed the number of American troops who died during the nearly 2 decades U.S. units were in Vietnam, and about equal the number of Afghan security forces killed over the entire war in Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021.
Okay, now that's a true statement. Here's the New York Times article. But what's not true is what they leave you with as an impression. Let's hear a little bit what she has to say here first.
Wasn't impressed by this, and of course snapped back saying that it's all lies and exaggerations.
Okay, well, before we get to him talking about this, let's look at the New York Times article. Here's the actual article, and they did say that. Okay, so if I scroll down, you see in just a year and a half, Ukraine's military troops, and it's a legitimate quote from the article. What they didn't say was this: Russia's military casualties, the officials said, are approaching 300,000. The number includes as many as 120,000 deaths and 170 to 180,000 injured troops. And they did go on to say that Russia is much larger than Ukraine and has a larger population on which to replenish. But that's very different. They highlighted that there's around 70,000 Ukrainians killed, and they forgot about that there's 120,000 Russian deaths. So they're not being fair with the articles in explaining this. And in doing that, it helps you go, this might not be the most credible reporting, and it's really not. What are they going to omit or leave out? Now, what's fascinating about this is that when they're talking about this, they're talking about the Ukrainian deaths as if 69 is a figure that is no different than the 3 times or 10 times figure that they have been reporting on their own network for months. I mean, for months they've been saying that Ukrainians, 20,000 were killed here and 200,000 Ukrainians were killed over. Right? I mean, they would just multiply it by a factor of like 10. However many Ukrainians they said were dead, they would say that there's only 1/10 of the Russians that were killed in the same engagement. So that they're not saying that either, I find very, very interesting. Let's hear what they have to say here.
Our army is not large enough to talk about losses of 70,000 soldiers. Those who are calling such figures obviously do not have the accurate information about the situation in our country.
And that's potentially fair. Like, this is what the U.S. estimation was as far as the New York Times is reporting. It's not necessarily accurate, and they don't, like, part of this is the fog of war. We can't necessarily tell. It seems like it might be accurate, but we don't actually know.
I've been monitoring all the activities on our territory on a daily basis since February 24th, 2022. I do not understand why respected journalists are spreading such inaccurate information about our losses.
Okay, well, that leads me to another point, and that is that this New York Times article that they're reporting on breathlessly yesterday was 2 weeks old. Like, if you look at the date on this, this is the 18th of August, and they're just reporting on this in this video here as if it was somehow brand new. Did it take them 2 weeks to figure out how to put this kind of stuff together, or I'm not sure what? Okay, let's keep going.
Western media have also been spreading a report based on a leaked U.S. intelligence assessment which states that not only is Ukraine's counteroffensive not going well, but that it is doomed to fail.
Okay, and that's an even older one, and that's older than what we saw just recently. And if you want to understand, like, Ukraine's getting a breakthrough right now. Like, they actually are breaking through the first lines. And so in this video, I was talking about how, yes, they're breaking through, and here's what's taking so long. They have to get through this and that and the other thing in order to be able to break through the lines. So again, this is older information that they're highlighting again as if it's somehow this new breakthrough.
Quite a change in tune for Western media, and once again, it didn't go unnoticed.
Criticizing the slow pace of counteroffensive equals to spitting into the face of Ukrainian soldier who sacrifices his life every day, moving forward and liberating 1 kilometer of Ukrainian soil.
And honestly, if I was him, I'd feel exactly the same way. I mean, I get it. I mean, like, criticize them for doing what? I mean, it's a very, very difficult thing to get through. I would urge you, if you have not yet already, to watch this about the breakthrough. I just posted it yesterday, and it's really powerful. I mean, these guys are talking about how difficult this is, and yeah, okay, let's keep going.
After another.
Some would argue that a slap in the face is sending soldiers to their death.
Yeah, those some that are arguing that this is sending soldiers to their death are Russians who want the war to be concluded on their terms right now.
Admitting that you don't have a large enough army, yet refusing to negotiate a solution, but continuing to beg for more money and weapons, and even after getting them, still not being able to make progress.
And this is like arguing that, why are you sending them weapons? I mean, all you're doing is prolonging the misery. That's what Russians and their propagandist repeaters will say.
Our servicemen must stay motivated. They must know we're taking care of them.
I guess my motivation...
That's actually good. I mean, you want your leadership to be actually taking care of you, not just sending you into a meat grinder and thinking about prizing your life over time.
They mean hiding the number of losses and refusing to accept the negative assessment of their failing counteroffensive. Quite
no, and no, but those are all Russian talking points.
Hard to do now that it's all over their favorite media, so it's hardly surprising that Ukraine's security forces continue to snatch young men off the street just like this and force them to join.
Now, I watched that video. I don't know how accurate or whatever it is, but I can't imagine that in Russia, everybody's like willingly going, you know what, sign me up. No, there's no pressure, especially when 800,000, somewhat toward 1 million, have fled the country after mobilization.
Their suicide mission. But Zelensky has a strategy, apparently, and he's all about protecting his soldiers.
The Ukrainian armed forces are conducting a cautious and measured offensive because they are protecting the lives of servicemen. If they tell me that the offensive will last 2 months and thousands will die, or if it will last 3 months and fewer people will die, of course I will choose the latter. Let it last 4 or 5 months, but with no losses. People are more important than time.
Even locals have had
That's arguably true. It's better to be slower and save more lives. Um, I don't know what the issue is
had
here.
enough and aren't buying Zelensky's words anymore, with zero progress being made on missing soldiers and POWs.
So this one's interesting. They're saying zero progress is being made on missing soldiers and POWs. They're trying to negotiate with Russia to get them back, and they haven't made any progress. And this is a protest, which appears to be protesting we need to get our Azov soldiers back. Now, I don't speak Russian, but I don't think that they're saying end the war. I think they're saying they want their soldiers back, but it's twisted as if this is some great opposition to Zelensky and we got to stop this war now and Jane Fonda kind of stuff.
These were originally Zelensky's core supporters, and you can see them with far-right insignia, flags, and words of support for the missing fighters from the Azov neo-Nazi battalion.
Okay, not neo-Nazi, but let's say the missing Azov soldiers, they want them back. And I understand that. We still haven't heard anything from Olavinka, where the Russians blew up Azov fighters and then said it was a HIMARS attack, and we want the UN to come inspect, but they never let the UN actually come inspect. So there's a problem there, and it's Russia that they're having to deal with in order to get them back.
They want their heroes back and demand an exchange for Russians. But it's crickets from their officials. They're probably too busy trying to figure out
But it's crickets from the Russians in order to negotiate that.
what the West is planning next, considering all these recent negative leaks and reports and subsequent whining from Kiev. Not a good look for either of them, really. And judging by the recent developments, it seems they know it, but are still dragging it out until the last Ukrainian soldier.
So this is how Russia is reporting on Ukrainian losses, on Ukrainian deaths, and it's just like one twist after another of the truth. And honestly, after looking at the New York Times article where they wouldn't say anything about how Russia's military is 120,000 deaths and upwards of 300,000 total casualties with 170 to 180 injured troops. I mean, can you believe anything else that she says when she only highlights this one piece in order to kind of shade the truth and twist it one direction? That's the kind of thing that you experience regularly on RT. And if you don't believe me, just go read it like I do and you'll experience the same thing. All right. Thank you for your time. I'm curious about your comments, and thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.